Hello everyone, and welcome to the 255th episode of Analyzing Evil, featuring Askeladd from Vinland Saga. Askeladd is not evil incarnate, nor is he a misunderstood hero. Like most characters in Vinland Saga, he is a man shaped by circumstance, justification, and consequence. Makoto Yukimura constructs a world that rejects traditional heroes and villains alike, presenting war not as a proving ground for virtue, but as a failure of imagination and restraint. Violence in Vinland Saga is not glamorous, it's corrosive. Even Thorfinn, our protagonist, is forced to confront the cost of his actions in bondage and despair. Askeladd understands this truth better than most. He knows that war is the language of weak men. But what separates him from others is not denial, but acceptance. He uses violence fully aware of its emptiness, convinced that once certain lines are crossed, salvation becomes inaccessible to men like himself. By the time this story ends, Askeladd does not seek redemption, he seeks completion. Askeladd was born in late 10th century England to Lydia, an enslaved Welshwoman, and Olaf, a Danish Viking lord. Before Askeladd becomes a tactician, a killer, or a kingmaker, he is a child born to a woman the world has already decided does not matter. Lydia is a Welsh slave living under Danish occupation. She is not merely enslaved in a legal sense, but culturally erased, stripped of land, language, autonomy, and future. Her body is treated as property, her labor as expendable, and her identity as irrelevant. In Vinland Saga, this form of domination is not portrayed as exceptional cruelty, but as routine. That mundanity is the point. Lydia's suffering is not the result of a single evil act. It is the outcome of a system that normalizes conquest and calls it order. Within that system, Lydia does the only thing left to her. She remembers. She remembers Wales not as it is, but as it was meant to be. And when memory is no longer enough, she turns to myth. By naming her son after Lucius Artorius Castus, Lydia is not making a claim about destiny or bloodline. She's performing an act of resistance. Artorius, the once and future king, represents a promise that history has not yet kept with her people. In a world that has taken everything tangible from her, myth becomes the last thing she can still own. This is not faith as doctrine, it is faith as survival. Lydia's belief in Artorius is not naive optimism, it's psychological necessity. Without the promise that someone will return, that the world can be set right, there is no framework wherein her suffering makes sense. The myth gives structure to pain. It tells her that endurance is not meaningless, that history bends back eventually, that her son is not merely another child born into chains. Askeladd understands this, even as a child. He does not believe Artorius will come, but he understands why his mother must believe it. He recognizes the story not as truth, but as scaffolding, something fragile, artificial, and essential. This distinction matters. Askeladd doesn't internalize hope. He internalizes obligation. If the world will not produce a hero, then someone must act in their place. To everyone else, he is not Artorius. He is called Askeladd, one covered in ash. This name is a deliberate humiliation. Ash marks him as waste, as residue, as something burned and discarded. He is a bastard among Vikings, a slave among warriors, and a reminder of conquest made flesh. Lydia sees a future. The world insists he has none. Over time, Lydia's faith begins to fracture. Years of enslavement, neglect, and sexual exploitation erode the boundary between belief and delusion. What began as a story told to a child becomes something she clings to reflexively. The myth hardens. It stops being metaphor and starts becoming expectation. Artorius is no longer an idea. He is a person who will arrive. When Olaf returns, Lydia mistakes reality for fulfillment. She approaches him openly, joyfully, convinced that the moment has finally come. In her mind, the suffering has reached its conclusion. The world is about to correct itself. But then, Olaf raises his blade. This is the moment where myth and reality collide and shatter. Askeladd intervenes not because he believes in Artorius, but because he understands, instinctively, that if he does not act, the world will remain exactly as it is. He has never held a weapon before. He has never been taught to fight. And yet when he takes the blade, it feels right. Not righteous. Necessary. That distinction defines his entire life. Olaf does not die that day. Instead, he recognizes the boy as his son and brings him into his household. On the surface, this is an act of mercy. In practice, it's a lesson. Askeladd is given comfort without legitimacy, education without belonging, proximity to power without a claim to it. He learns intimately how cruelty can wear the mask of civility. What Lydia loses in that moment is not just safety, but coherence. The story that she built to survive no longer holds. Artorias did not come, the world did not correct itself, and the price of that realization is her mind. Askeladd never forgets this. This is the last time he acts without calculation. From that point forward, he doesn't believe in salvation. He believes in outcomes. He believes that if protection is to exist, it must be enforced, that if peace is to endure, it must be engineered, and that waiting for heroes is a luxury reserved only for those who have never needed one. Lydia gives Askeladd two things: a reason to act and a reason never to believe again. Everything that follows, every manipulation, every sacrifice, every calculated cruelty, is not born from hatred of the world, but from the certainty that the world does not save itself, and neither does he. Living among Olaf's legitimate children, Askeladd learned 7 lessons that would define him. Power is social, not moral. Patience outlasts strength. Hierarchy matters more than fairness. Violence is a tool, not an instinct. Trust is a resource to be spent. Identity is negotiable. Cruelty wears a civilized face. Askeladd learned to wait. He learned to perform loyalty, and when the moment came, he killed Olaf without hesitation, cutting down his father and ensuring his face was the last thing Olaf ever saw. With Olaf dead and his brothers executed for treason, Askeladd achieved what his mother had prayed for. He freed Lydia and carried her back to Wales. She died shortly after. This is the only moment in Askeladd's life that can be described as selfless. From then on, Wales ceased to be a place. It became an obligation. If Lydia represents the myth Askeladd learns to replace, then Thors represents the life Askeladd believes is no longer available to him. Thors is introduced not as a philosopher, but as a weapon. He is the troll of Yom, a legendary hero among the Jomsvikings, feared for his strength and efficiency. When we first see him in battle, he moves through enemy ships with ease, cutting men down with practiced precision. There is nothing hesitant or weak about him. Violence, for Thors, is not foreign. And then, without ceremony, he stops. Thrown into the sea during battle, Thors kills another man beneath the water, pauses, and lets his sword sink into the depths. He swims away not because he is beaten, but because he is finished. This moment is critical. Thors does not abandon violence because he lacks the capacity for it. He abandons it because he understands it too well. He recognizes that the skill that once defined him has become the thing hollowing him out, and rather than waiting for war to empty him completely, he leaves. This alone makes him dangerous. To Askeladd, who believes that once certain lines are crossed there is no return, Thors is a contradiction made flesh. Thors has crossed every line Askeladd considers absolute. He is killed, commanded, conquered, and yet he walks away intact. He builds a quiet life in Iceland. He raises children. He refuses war without collapsing into cowardice. Thors represents the possibility that salvation is not delayed, but chosen. That idea is intolerable to Askeladd. When the Jomsvikings come for Thors, led by Floki, it is not justice they seek, but correction. Thors's departure threatens the narrative that binds warrior cultures together, that strength must be spent in war, that violence is inevitable, that no one truly escapes it. Thors agrees to meet them, not to fight, but to protect his family and village. This is a defining moment for Thors. He does not run again. He does not hide behind others. He accepts responsibility without accepting bloodshed. When Askeladd meets Thors, he does not see a coward. He sees a man whose existence destabilizes everything he believes about power and consequence. Their duel is not a contest of strength. It's a collision of worldviews. Thors fights without intent to kill. Askeladd fights to win. Thors disarms Askeladd repeatedly, calmly, efficiently. At any point, he could end the fight. He chooses not to. Even when Thorfinn is pinned and threatened, Thors refuses to cross the line he has set for himself. He will protect his son, but not by surrendering the principles he has already paid so dearly to reclaim. This is the moment where Askeladd truly understands what Thors is. Thors is not naive, he is disciplined. Askeladd's response is immediate and final. He signals his men. Arrows rain down. Thors dies where he stands, not defeated, but overwhelmed. On the surface, this is betrayal. In truth, it is panic. Askeladd cannot allow Thors to live, because if Thors is right, if a man can step away from violence before it empties him, then Askeladd's entire life becomes a series of unnecessary choices. His patience, his cruelty, his sacrifices, his refusal to believe in redemption, all of it collapses into contingency rather than fate. Thors does not just reject violence, he rejects inevitability. Askeladd cannot accept that, not because he lacks the imagination to see another path, but because accepting it would mean admitting he chose wrong too early and stayed too long. So Thors must die. Yet even in death, Thors leaves a wound. Askeladd does not mock him. He does not dismiss him. Instead, he carries the contradiction forward. Thors becomes a quiet reference point, a man who reached the same conclusion Askeladd claims to believe in, but arrived there without manipulation, exhaustion, or domination. This is why Askeladd keeps Thorfinn alive, not out of mercy, not out of affection, but because Thors planted a question he cannot ignore. Can a man raised in violence choose peace after understanding it? Askeladd doesn't know the answer, but if it is true, then men cannot simply reject violence without experiencing it fully. They must be emptied by it, and in order to prove that, he raises Thorfinn. Askeladd does not enslave Thorfinn outright. Instead, he offers him a bargain, duels in exchange for service. This proposition appears fair, almost honorable, but in reality, it's a containment strategy. Thorfinn believes he's choosing his path. Askeladd ensures that every choice leads back to him. The duels give Thorfinn the illusion of agency without the possibility of escape. He fights, he loses, he tries again. Each failure sharpens his skill, but narrows his world. The promise of revenge keeps him obedient. The delay keeps him useful. This is the first and most important lesson Askeladd teaches Thorfinn. Though never allowed, violence can feel like purpose without ever becoming one. Thorfinn is encouraged to fight, but never to rule. He kills soldiers, commanders, mercenaries, men whose deaths change nothing. There are no consequences beyond survival, no villages to protect, no people to answer to, no future to plan. Askeladd makes sure of this. Thorfinn becomes exceptionally skilled, but his strength produces no order. He is motion without direction, rage without structure. He doesn't inspire loyalty, fear, or belief, only momentary utility. This is not an accident. Askeladd is not raising a successor. He's testing a hypothesis. Thors understood violence before rejecting it. Thorfinn knows nothing but violence. Thors chose restraint. Thorfinn is never given the opportunity to choose anything else. Askeladd watches closely. If Thorfinn were to arrive at peace on his own, if he were to grow beyond revenge despite being raised inside war, it would validate Thors's worldview and invalidate Askeladd's. But that moment never comes. Thorfinn does not question violence. He questions delay. He doesn't ask why he fights, only when he will be able to kill Askeladd. And that answer is always later. There are moments where Askeladd appears to protect Thorfinn, intervening before his first kill, coaching him against Thorkel, even assisting him indirectly in battle. These moments are often misread as paternal instinct or buried guilt. They are neither. Askeladd doesn't protect Thorfinn from death because he cares about the boy. He protects him from dying too early. A failed experiment teaches nothing. Thorfinn must live long enough to become proof. As Thorfinn grows stronger, Askeladd grows more distant. He leaves him behind when it's convenient. He withholds guidance when it no longer serves a purpose. He never offers comfort, explanation, or closure. This is not cruelty, it's data collection. And the data is clear. Thorfinn does not become a leader. He does not become a king. He does not become a protector. He becomes a weapon pointed inward. After years of violence, Thorfinn is still empty. He has strength, but no vision. Skill, but no restraint. Hatred, but no resolution. This is Askeladd's conclusion. Violence alone doesn't create order. It doesn't produce peace. It doesn't even reliably produce monsters capable of ruling. It produces tools, sharp, loyal, and disposable. Where Thorfinn is raised to endure violence without belief, Canute will be forced to confront belief under violence. That distinction changes everything. Thorfinn is the experiment that exhausts itself. Canute is the variable that threatens to succeed. And for the first time, Askeladd is no longer observing. He's committing. When Askeladd turns his attention to Canute, it's not because he sees strength, promise, or leadership. He sees absence. Canute is sheltered, devout, gentle to the point of paralysis. He doesn't command, inspire, or threaten. Where Thorfinn burns with rage, Canute retreats inward. Where Thorfinn lunges at the world, Canute waits for it to pass him by. At first glance, he appears unfit for survival, let alone rule. Askeladd despises this kind of weakness, but he also recognizes something new. Canute has not yet been emptied by violence. His beliefs, however fragile, remain intact, and that makes him dangerous not as he is, but as he might become. Canute is not proof of Askeladd's worldview. He's a challenge to it. When Thorkel captures Canute during the Danish campaign in England, the situation is immediately volatile. A living prince destabilizes every power structure around him. A dead one risks collapse. Either outcome invites intervention. Askeladd does not rescue Canute out of loyalty or compassion. He intervenes because leaving Canute in Thorkel's hands allows chaos to unfold without control. Thorkel seeks spectacle, not stability. Others will move for leverage. Delay invites unpredictability. So Askeladd acts. The battle to extract Canute is not just a demonstration of tactical brilliance. It's a declaration of intent. From this point forward, Askeladd is no longer reacting to the world. He's shaping it. Canute becomes another piece on the board. However, standing between Askeladd and Canute is Ragnar. Ragnar isn't a fool. He understands men like Askeladd. He recognizes manipulation when he sees it, and he refuses to allow Canute to be forged through exposure to violence and power. His loyalty is paternal, not political. He wants Canute safe, preserved, untouched. From Askeladd's perspective, this makes Ragnar incompatible with kingship. Canute cannot rule while insulated. He cannot learn consequence while protected. And so long as Ragnar speaks for him, fear, faith, and decision-making remain filtered through someone else. Askeladd doesn't rush this conclusion. He tests alternatives. He leads Canute through Wales not only to escape pursuit, but to expose him to governance without conquest. Wales is poor, defensible, culturally unified, and politically fragmented. A land with little to gain from empire and everything to lose. Welsh leaders speak openly of treaties. Protection is discussed, obligation is framed, and yet nothing is signed. This is deliberate. Canute has no authority to promise protection. Any oath that he swears now would be meaningless. Askeladd understands this. Wales is not where the agreement is secured. It is where the expectation is set. It's here that Canute is introduced to a form of leadership defined by restraint rather than expansion. He's shown a land that survives not through dominance, but through cohesion and terrain. Wales becomes the ethical stake of the story, not as a nation to be ruled, but as a people who cannot survive imperial logic. Ragnar objects. He sees this exposure as dangerous. Askeladd sees it as necessary. When persuasion fails, Askeladd escalates. In Wales, he orders the destruction of a village in Canute's presence. Men, women, and children are gathered and executed at his command. Askeladd does not strike the blows himself, but he claims responsibility openly. This isn't just a raid for resources, it's a demonstration. Canute is forced to witness authority enacted without justification. He's shown the cost of power before he ever holds it. Ragnar is horrified. Canute is shattered. This is the moment that Askeladd commits fully to his method. If violence and power are poised to destroy Canute, then Askeladd will submerge him in both and observe the result. When Thorkel catches up and battle erupts, the fighting is real, chaos is real, death is real. Ragnar's end is not. Askeladd uses the confusion as cover. He sends for Ragnar and kills him away from Canute, ensuring that death appears as another casualty of war. This isn't done in anger or haste, it's surgical. Ragnar's death is the excision of dependency. With him gone, there is no buffer left between Canute and the world. No voice to soften consequence, no one to absorb fear on his behalf. Askeladd doesn't replace Ragnar, he withdraws. In the aftermath, Askeladd creates an environment where silence is punished and hesitation is costly. He offers no comfort, no guidance, no moral framing. Canute is left to confront the world directly. When Canute finally speaks, when he asserts authority, demands obedience, and rejects passive faith, it's not because he's been taught how to rule. It's because inaction has become more dangerous than choice. The priest's crisis of faith, left uninterrupted, accelerates this transformation. Canute doesn't abandon belief because Askeladd instructs him to, but because belief alone offers no shelter. Peace won't arrive through prayer. Order must be constructed by human hands. This is the birth of Canute as a king, not through mentorship, not through inspiration, but through pressure. For the first time, Askeladd's certainty wavers. Canute isn't hollow like Thorfinn. He isn't broken like Lydia. He isn't trapped by violence like Askeladd himself. Canute absorbs brutality and still emerges with purpose. This should terrify Askeladd, because it suggests that salvation may not require exhaustion, that belief can survive violence rather than being erased by it, that a man might arrive at peace without first being emptied. And if that's true, then Askeladd's life becomes a choice, not a sentence. He doesn't allow himself to sit with this thought for long. By the time Askeladd returns to Denmark, he's already secured what he needs from Canute. The prince has learned to speak, he has learned to command, and more importantly, he has learned to endure consequence. Now, Askeladd turns to a different battlefield. Not the field, not the court, but the public imagination. To protect Canute from Sweyn, Askeladd engineers an assassination attempt, not by striking at the king, but by staining him. He arranges for a slave woman, chosen not for guilt, but for resemblance, to be killed in Canute's place. Her death is staged to resemble a failed attempt on the prince's life. Immediately after, Askeladd releases rumor into the city. Taverns fill with whispers. The narrative takes shape. The message is simple and devastating. If Canute dies, Sweyn will be blamed. This act is one of Askeladd's most revealing. The woman poses no threat. She holds no power. She is not an enemy. She is killed to create leverage. This is Askeladd's true domain, political combat. Here, blood is not spilled to remove opposition, but to sculpt belief. The death itself is secondary. What matters is who will be blamed, who will hesitate, and who will now think twice before acting. In times past, Askeladd justified violence as necessity. Here, necessity has vanished. The killing is preventative, abstract, and entirely instrumental. This isn't strategy born of desperation. It's control born of confidence, and it reveals the final stage of Askeladd's decay. Where once he killed to survive, he now kills to narrate. Where once violence served protection, it now serves probability. The human cost is no longer weighed against outcome. It's assumed. Askeladd doesn't hesitate. He doesn't reflect. He doesn't justify, because at this point, morality has ceased to function as a consideration at all. This act is not cruelty in isolation. It's preparation. By staging an assassination and shaping the narrative that follows, Askeladd isn't protecting Canute from immediate danger. He's hardening the political ground beneath him. He's ensuring that when power shifts, it shifts cleanly, decisively, and without hesitation. And the reason for that preparation is not Denmark, it's Wales. Wales represents a land that can't survive imperialism. It's poor, geographically fragmented, and culturally cohesive rather than militarily unified. It doesn't possess the resources that make conquest profitable, nor the centralized authority that makes subjugation efficient. If Denmark invades Wales, the result will not be governance, it will be eradication. Askeladd understands this in a way no Danish ruler ever could. To the Empire, Wales is expendable. To Askeladd, it's non-negotiable. This is why Wales functions differently in his planning than any other territory. It's not something to be ruled, exploited, or absorbed. It's something that must be left alone. And this defines every political decision he makes from this point forward. Askeladd doesn't believe peace is the natural endpoint of history. He believes peace exists only where power is restrained. And restraint, in an imperial system, does not emerge organically. It must be enforced from the top down. This is why Canute matters. Askeladd does not need Canute to love Wales. He needs Canute to understand why conquering it would be meaningless. Wales becomes the moral constraint that Askeladd places on kingship itself, a boundary that reveals whether power will be exercised with intent or merely appetite. A ruler who can't respect that boundary will eventually consume everything beneath him. When Sweyn announces his intent to expand into Wales, Askeladd realizes that constraint is about to be violated, and that means the system must be corrected. Sweyn is not a mad tyrant. He's not impulsive, cruel, or incompetent. he's worse. Sweyn is rational. He represents imperial logic in its most efficient form. Expansion as inevitability, dominance as inheritance, conquest as duty rather than choice. Under his rule, violence isn't chaotic, it's organized, predictable, sanitized by distance and ceremony. This makes him untouchable by argument. Askeladd attempts diplomacy. He appeals to pragmatism. He frames Wales as unprofitable, defensible, and culturally resistant. He offers logic where possible. Sweyn is unmoved, because from Sweyn's perspective, the value of conquest is not measured in material gain alone. It's measured in demonstration. Empire must expand not because it needs to, but because it can. Any restraint signals weakness. Any exception invites defiance. Wales, by existing outside imperial logic, becomes a threat simply by surviving. Askeladd understands something with perfect clarity. So long as Sweyn lives, Wales will never be safe. There is no compromise to be made, no delay to be negotiated. The decision has already been rendered. Askeladd doesn't rage. He doesn't hesitate. He accepts the necessity. He has spent his entire life believing that once certain lines are crossed, there is no return. That violence, once embraced, forecloses redemption. That men like him cannot arrive at peace cleanly. So he does what men like him do best. He acts. The assassination of Sweyn isn't a moment of passion. It isn't vengeance. It isn't martyrdom. It's resolution. When Askeladd kills the king, he does so knowing exactly what will follow. Chaos will erupt. Blades will be drawn. Blood will be spilled. And eventually, Canute will strike him down. This isn't a flaw in the plan. It is the plan. Askeladd understands that Canute cannot rule in the shadow of the man who made him. Authority cannot be inherited secondhand. If Canute is to stand as king, Askeladd must be removed. Not quietly, but decisively. Canute must kill him. Not because Askeladd deserves punishment, but because kingship requires separation. A ruler cannot emerge while indebted to the hand that placed the crown upon his head. Askeladd ensures that when Canute ascends, he does so alone. In his final moments, Askeladd doesn't plead. He doesn't explain himself. He doesn't ask to be remembered kindly. There is no attempt at absolution, because absolution was never the goal. He doesn't die redeemed. He dies finished. Finished with manipulation. Finished with leverage. Finished with usefulness. And finished with the lie that he might live to see peace. Askeladd never believed Artorias would return. He believed that when the world fails to produce heroes, someone must act in their place knowing full well they will not survive the role. That was the cost. Askeladd's story isn't a tragedy because he dies. It's a tragedy because he was right too early. He understood violence as hollow before he understood how to escape it. He recognized the end before he believed he could reach it. And by the time proof arrived, by the time Canute demonstrated that belief might survive violence, it was already too late for him to follow. So he ensures the future, even if he can't inhabit it. Not a hero, not a villain, not redeemed, just finished. Thank you all for tuning in to this episode of Analyzing Evil, and I hope you've enjoyed. What are your thoughts on Askeladd? Did I miss anything? Let me know down below, and leave a suggestion for a villain you'd like to see featured while you're at it. If you like this video, hit that thumbs up button, and make sure to subscribe if you haven't already. A big thank you to all of my subscribers, my patrons, my members, anyone who's decided to honor me with a super thank, and especially our Dark Lord channel members, Elijah Kai VA, Effigy, Mr. Awesome, Lord N, and Just Keeping It Real. And a most vile thank you to those whose names you're seeing on screen now. Join the channel's Discord server and subreddit to interact with myself and the community, and follow me on the social media platforms listed below to keep up with the channel. As always, thanks for watching, and I'll be seeing you soon.